Welcome to Justice Matters. I'm Denise George, Attorney General of the U.S. Virgin Islands. Justice Matters is a program aimed to inform, engage, and empower you with knowledge of Virgin Islands laws that affect our everyday lives and our community. We have insightful discussions with special guests on the laws and related topics so you can be empowered to make a difference in our community. Today's topic is the Virgin Islands Lottery, keeping it legal. Lotteries are a government-run activity, as with the Virgin Islands Lottery, which is established and operated by the VI government. Unlike casinos that are run by private companies in the competitive commercial market, government lotteries are run by 48 jurisdictions in the United States, 45 states, plus the District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. Lotteries are subject to the laws of each jurisdiction and operated independently by each state and territory. Virgin Islands law establishes the Virgin Islands Lottery as an instrumentality of the government of the Virgin Islands and as the official lottery of the Virgin Islands. And the law requires that it be managed by a director and subject to the supervision of the Virgin Islands Lottery Commission. The Lottery Commission consists of the Commissioner of Finance, the Director of the Office of Management and Budget, and 5 additional members appointed by the Governor with the approval of the Legislature. Of the 5 members appointed by the Governor, 2 members must be licensed lottery sales agents, 1 from the District of St. Thomas, St. John, and 1 from the District of St. Croix. Of the remaining 3 members, each must be a resident of St. Croix, St. Thomas, and St. John, respectively. State and territory lotteries have become an essential revenue-producing government activity. In virtually all states and territories with lotteries, the stated purpose is to raise revenue for public and community purposes. Likewise, the sole stated purpose of the Virgin Islands Lottery is to raise revenue as well. Specifically, Title 32 of Virgin Islands laws require that revenue raised by the VI Lottery from sales goes, for example, to the Department of Education, the Office of Veterans Affairs, a disabled person's special fund, to fund small business development and loans, a textbook reimbursement revolving fund, and the Summer Employment Youth Program, among other purposes and uses. So how does the VI Lottery operate and conduct these lotteries? Well, Virgin Islands law authorizes the VI Lottery to contract with companies to carry out and operate various lotteries on the government of the Virgin Islands' behalf and under the control and supervision of the Virgin Islands Lottery. For instance, the government, through the Virgin Islands Lottery, contracts with Caribbean Lottery to operate the Powerball, the Mega Millions, and Scratch games, and also contract with Southland Gaming to operate video lottery terminals in the St. Thomas district. And they're required to have a centralized computer system that allows the Virgin Islands Lottery to monitor gameplay and to perform control functions. And then there's also the traditional VI Lottery, which consists of the sale of lottery tickets through lottery dealers throughout the Virgin Islands. Virgin Islands law requires a percentage of the revenues and profits to be paid to the Virgin Islands government and requires compliance in the manner in which those lottery games and lottery functions are conducted on behalf of the government and to benefit the government of the Virgin Islands. The government does this through regulation and enforcement. Those are the legal lotteries. But what about our laws regarding illegal lotteries? Virgin Islands criminal laws prohibit the operation of any lottery other than the Virgin Islands Lottery. This is similar throughout the states and territories that run lotteries. Under Title 14, the law states, whoever contrives, prepares, sets up, or draws any lottery other than an official lottery of the Virgin Islands of the United States shall be fined not more than $500 or imprisoned not more than 2 years or both. There's one exception there, and that is where the police commissioner may issue permits for raffles or for persons to conduct raffles in good faith associated with nonprofit organizations. And then there's Title 14, also another section, Section 1223, which deals with selling lottery tickets, illegal lottery tickets. States whosoever sells, gives, or in any manner whatsoever furnishes or transfers to or for any other person any ticket, chance, share, or interest, or any paper, certificate, or instrument purporting or understood to be or represent any ticket, chance, share, or interest other than an official lottery of the Virgin Islands of the United States shall be fined not more than $200 or imprisoned not more than 1 year or both. So really the difference in purchasing legal lotteries is that with the legal lottery, namely the Virgin Islands Lottery, your investment goes into your community, even if you do not win. But purchases of illegal lotteries, with that, your investment does not go into your own community and likely goes to benefit organized crime and other criminal activity. Joining us today about that on Justice Matters is Lamarr J, the Director of Security and Investigations. In other words, the head of the enforcement team at the Virgin Islands Lottery, whose job it is to assure compliance and integrity of the Virgin Islands Lottery and to enforce our VI lottery laws. Welcome to Justice Matters, Mr. Jacobs.
Thank you, Madam AG.
So tell us, what exactly is your title at the Virgin Islands Lottery?
So I am the Territorial Director of Security and Investigations.
And what do you do in that position? What is your function?
So my main function is to have oversight over all our contractors who provide services to the VI Lottery. We also regulate those contractors, and primarily we target and identify any illegal lotteries in the territory.
Okay, so let's start first with the contractors.
Okay.
Who are the contractors, and what do they do, and what kind of games are they operating on behalf of the Virgin Islands Lottery?
So we can start with Caribbean Lottery. They are contracted to provide us Mega Millions, Powerball, in addition to scratch and win games such as Pokeno and Pick 4.
And how do you, let's say you indicated that you regulate, but you have to, the VI Lottery, they're doing it, they're contracted to actually operate those games for the VI Lottery, but how does the VI Lottery actually maintain control and supervision to be able to assure that the integrity is intact of those games?
So with Caribbean Lottery, they came in, they trained the Virgin Islands Lottery staff. We're the ones who actually execute and carry out the Powerball and Mega Millions draw in the evenings. What you will find is that we have different mechanisms in place, different machines that we check the paper stock to validate tickets, and we're actually the ones in there overseeing the operations. So that's how we're able to protect that portion.
When we talk about with Caribbean Lottery and the contract for the Powerball, let's say, the Powerball is a national thing that that happens all over the country.
Yes, it is.
So give us an idea of how the VI Lottery controls or at least oversees that operation, even though it's a national one, and how does it do that in relation to the other states?
Okay, so the Virgin Islands Lottery, is important to know that we're a part of what we call MUSCLE. That is the multi-state lottery system. That's all the lotteries within the United States. So it is the standard, and they regulate based on that.
Oh, okay. And so it's a system then.
It's a system in place.
Together. Okay. So when they have the Powerball drawings, what is it that goes on actually with the lottery?
Okay.
The lottery here, the VI Lottery, as well as all of the other states that have the Powerball at that same time. What happens?
So it's a pretty interesting process. When you have a Powerball drawing or a Mega Million, at a certain time in the evening, all lotteries have to be balanced.
Mhm.
So within the room that you're executing the Powerball draw, you must have an enforcement officer. You'll have an IT individual. You also have an auditor in there making sure everything lines up so that when the draw is completed, you could process all the winners accordingly.
Okay, and that pretty much goes on all over.
All over.
And so that's how the BI lottery, when you talk about the monitors and the law enforcement, that's the law enforcement of the BI lottery.
Yes,
That's you. That's
yes.
you all. Okay, and then let's talk about the next contractor, which would be Southern
Southern
Gaming.
Gaming, yes.
And what do they operate? What games do they operate, or what lotteries do they operate?
So Southland Gaming operates the video lottery terminals, otherwise known as VLT machines, in the St. Thomas St. John district. They have well over 500 in this district. So that's what they're contracted to do.
And how does the Virgin Islands Lottery maintain supervision and oversight to assure that it is carried out legally and with the integrity that it requires?
Okay, so the Virgin Islands Lottery staff, they're trained to go into each one of these machines. They're actually able to check the seals, make sure nothing is being tampered with. We also contract with GLI, which is a nationally certified company that comes down, audits the machines, make sure everything is working as it should be. A neat thing is that we also have access, full access to what we call their Bally system or the central gaming system. So I can sit behind my desk at any given time. I could look at over 500 machines, make sure they're functioning right. I could see if a door is open. I could see how many dollars, how many cents is going in and out when the machine is open, when it's closed. So it's it's a very fail-safe system.
Okay, and then so I guess that requires that connection with each VLT, each video lottery terminal, that connection to BI lottery system, so you can see everything that goes on.
Yeah.
Okay, now with respect to the ones those companies that we contract with, that the government contracts with, of course, as a part of the contract, there's a certain portion that goes to the Virgin Islands Lottery, because that's the whole purpose of it, is to raise revenue for the government, right? How does the Virgin Islands Lottery enforce, or I should say assure, that the amounts that are paid, the amounts of the profit and the profit share that is paid to the government is correct?
Okay. So I can't speak to the particular numbers, but I can speak to the process in balancing and making sure.
Okay.
So as I said, with the central gaming system that's connected through VI Lottery with Southland Gaming, everything that we're seeing on their end, they see on our end. So when you print these reports at the end of the week or at the end of every 2 weeks, when the transactions are going in, we're able to audit, balance them, and those monies are transferred into VI Lottery and then dispersed out into the various programs as mandated by law.
Okay, so therefore, we don't have a situation where you just have the contractor, let's say whether it's Southern Gaming or Caribbean Lottery, just sending to the VI Lottery. So this is how much we owe you. We're going to pay you, but VI Lottery actually monitors that and evaluates it. Okay, good. Okay, now let's get then to the traditional lottery. That is the Virgin Islands Lottery, conducted totally and operated by the Virgin Islands Lottery, right? Okay, what's that about? Describe that and the distinction.
So I'd first like to say I am Virgin Islands Lottery, and Virgin Islands Lottery is me. That is how we look at it. It's our traditional lottery, and I'm very proud to say that it is among the oldest in the Union, well over 80 years. So it is, of course, it is sold by our dealers throughout the territory, or we call them agents. They're the ones who are in the front lines selling the traditional lottery. It's drawn on a bi-weekly basis. We have about 5 top-tier prizes, and then a host of all other prizes below. Now,
let's talk about enforcement and assurances. How do you assure that the system is running accurately, honestly, with integrity, so that when we're out there buying the lotteries, the lottery dealers and everything, we know that the prizes are being pulled randomly, and we each of us get a fair chance. How do you do that?
Okay, so I'll give you a little history of how we execute the draw. Before, we used to use what we call a ball system. Used to be a big old machine. You've probably seen them on TV. Hundreds of little balls. They had to be strung up by a staff of maybe about 10, 11 people. You also have to make sure it's pressurized. You have to make sure all the balls are sealed. That used to be done. Sometimes that machine could open up, a ball fly out. Maybe a hose has a kink. It doesn't spin correctly. So all sorts of different stuff that sometimes you can't handle. However, we transition to what is the best in industry standard right now. It's called an RNG system, random number generator.
So this is a new system just coming in?
It's
Since
a new
when?
system. It's they've been operating, well, with VI Lottery, we're doing it about 2 years now. But it has been the industry standard for maybe the past 10 years or so. So maybe like 95% of lotteries in the world have transitioned to this type of system.
Okay, well, tell us more about that system and how it helps to maintain and assure the integrity of the lottery.
From an enforcement standpoint, we are the final control. So with the system, we're the ones who have to open and close the system for every draw. And of course, the system has seals, enforcement seals. We have to cut those seals each time the machine is open, and we have to reseal with new seals every time we close it. So at any given time, if we go to check that machine and we could see a seal is broken, then we know it's tampered. We'll have to go and do a pre-system check to identify what happened. So that's how we really keep everything secured within the machine and how it operates.
And so when you say we individually, you're talking about the enforcement officers?
The enforcement team, yes.
Okay.
Correct. Correct. And at every draw, it's just not one person. So you have a series of people who are there. You have an enforcement officer. You have someone from our IT department. You have an auditor, and you have one of the lottery board members there. So everyone has a specific function as to not to cross up what everyone is doing.
Oh, so there's like sort of like a checks and balances system then.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And so what about the dealers? And so with the traditional lottery, of course, we see the lottery dealers all the time. What is there a process that you go through with respect to assuring that those dealers that are selected are carefully selected to make sure that it complies with the various standards and of integrity and everything and compliance with the lottery?
Yes. So of course, with dealers, that process starts with us, the enforcement team. We do a background check on every dealer. We send them through the local background systems. We make sure that no one has any egregious offenses and stuff like that before they are granted permission to do the become dealers in the territory.
Okay. Now, and are these dealers employed or are they contracted?
They're actually employed individually. It's a job. They pay taxes.
It is a full-time job.
Yeah, it's a full-time job. It's a
Okay,
full-time
the
job.
VA lottery.
Yes.
Now, as far as enforcement, we talked about the legal lotteries. That's the ones that we contract with, the ones that are traditional lottery. And they're also illegal lottery. It is illegal to conduct any lottery that is not the Virgin Islands lottery.
Correct.
So considering that, how do you enforce that? And what is the situation? What is the status of that in the Virgin Islands based on what you've seen so far?
Okay, so traditionally, our biggest problem when it came to illegal lotteries in the territory, it would be the massive influx of the Puerto Rico lottery. As you know, it is not illegal to possess that lottery. However, it is illegal to sell that lottery. What we would do is we have partnered with a lot of our federal and local partners, coming up with ways how we could interdict how it's coming in, where it's going, and it started to work. Right now, we're really faced with a serious problem with what we call PALI. It's a numbers game. It originated in South America, Dominican Republic, those Latin countries. It's fast growing, it's mobile, it's easy. What it is, it's a small device, like a printer hooked up to a cell phone. You could come, give your 3 numbers, pay your $3, you go away. When it's time for the drawing, they contact you, and then you go ahead and you collect your winnings.
But that is not of the VI lottery. So
That
that's
is
an
not
illegal
of the
lottery.
VLI, so it's unregulated.
And among that is that kind of, are there any other types that are prevalent of illegal lotteries that are prevalent?
Yes, there's several. There's one called Bolita. They're doing what you call a susuhan. They're actually now bringing it into the bars, bringing it into hair salons. You have people walking around with just an envelope, take your name, your number, you put down, maybe if it's a $20 bet, then they draw it, they contact you. We're also seeing a rise in sports betting, sports gambling. As you know, there currently are no laws in the VI on the books, but it's happening. So we are working with our partners to try and rectify that front going any further.
Okay, so then when you talk about your partners in law enforcement and in enforcement, who are you talking about? I know you talk about your federal partners as well. Who?
We have a very good relationship with Customs, HSI. We actually have a good relationship with your office. You have some of the attorneys have been gracious enough to help us understand the laws, showing us ways how we could even possibly strengthen the laws in going after the illegal games. And VIPD is also a very good support.
We talk about, of course, it's illegal. Yes. It violates the law. But why is it so important that this law is enforced to limit these types of illegal lotteries going on throughout the Virgin Islands?
Well, sadly, based on a study, what we have done, we've seen that these games, they tie directly into human trafficking, drug smuggling, money laundering, that type of stuff. And we lose on annual basis upwards of $80 million a year out of this territory from those games. So that's why it is such a problem.
Okay, so the connection to larger crimes.
Yes.
Do you find so far, with respect to who conducts these illegal lotteries and what's been going on, and of course we can't say much about we can't say anything about pending investigations, but do you find that they're done individually by individuals or mainly by criminal enterprises behind it?
Good question. Based on what we've seen, it's from criminal enterprises. So these individual workers who are out there, they have handlers, they have people that they report to. So they're just maybe like the first line guys. Those are the ones that we're seeing.
And so we're talking about millions of dollars, a very lucrative illegal enterprise.
Yes.
In collaborating, let's say, with respect to the fact that many states, most of the states and territories do have their own state lotteries and their own laws. Is there ever a time when you actually collaborate with other states, even though the laws may be different in various states? Are there times when you collaborate with other states with respect to the same types of things that they're facing?
Oh, yes. Thankfully, I just recently completed a working session with Puerto Rico, who's our nearest neighbor. And of course, they have a lottery as well. And through our partnership, we have been able to share information. They've been very forthcoming. So we do operate together. We share information. I'm able to send them a case or anything that I think may be connected with the movement of the Puerto Rico lottery into the Virgin Islands and vice versa. And they have been very helpful with us. Okay.
And then in the fact that they're very helpful, isn't it also, as far as you know, with respect to state lotteries generally throughout, it's the same, pretty much the same. One thing that it's in common with respect to the laws is that that's the only legal lottery in those particular
in every
states
jurisdiction,
as well.
Yes.
Right. So it's not unusual that we have that with us. So, and we talked briefly with respect to, I think you mentioned briefly about the revenues and what they're used for.
Yes.
As opposed to the illegal lotteries, but the revenues that are used, that are received and the profits are received to the government of the Virgin Islands through the legal lotteries, they're used for what purposes, basically?
So just off the top of my head, I know we contribute to GRS. We contribute to the Horse Racing Association. They also provide scholarships. They provide support for people going back to school and college. A lot of stuff Virgin Islands. A lot of nonprofits as well.
I see.
And carnival and different stuff like that.
And as a part of the enforcement team, are you involved in making sure that the funds are allocated properly?
Oh, yes. We meet with the executive director of the agency, and we pretty much go through a planning session and make sure everything moves accordingly as it's supposed to.
Okay. Now, tell me, I mean, now that you're talking about the various lotteries, we have legal and illegal. If a person has a complaint with respect to how one of the, let's say, let's start with legal lotteries, how something is being is happening, or something it seems amiss, and they suspect that there's some wrongdoing on the part of either a contractor or some area, what can that citizen do?
So this is one or two things. They could actually go up on our website. We just established an anonymous tip line at www.winusvilottery.vi, or they could come into any one of the offices, request to speak to an enforcement officer, and we'll go ahead and receive that complaint, and we'll move forward based on the information.
Oh, so you would be able to investigate.
Oh, yes.
Again, as far as the illegal lotteries, is that the same process?
Same
Let's
process.
say if someone wants to report
Yes.
that, so
Same process.
the same process.
Same
They
process.
would go through that tip. And say that tip line again.
So it's www.winusvilottery.vi.
Okay, that's the website. And
That's on the website, and there's a link, a secured link that takes you directly to that separate session, and you could just put in your information, or you could call either one of the offices.
What would you say? What do you think is important for the public to know, the general public to know, regarding the lottery, these illegal lotteries, and what their role is in? What every person's role is with respect to assuring that the integrity of our lottery system just maintains and stays intact.
Very good question. Well, even starting with me, as I said, I am Virgin Islands Lottery. Virgin Islands Lottery is me. So we must take pride in our product. This is our product.
This is our lottery.
It is our lottery. So for me, I really want to make sure we educate the public. And it is my job right now. We're pushing a very strong campaign to let people know what's legal versus not legal. We want them to understand the differences between the games, understand that it's very hard when you have something that's foreign, that's not contributing to your way of life, that's really damaging our economy, versus you have ours and it's not really pushing forward because it's not getting the support locally. So we really want the public to know that we are here to push what's ours, and we need their help to help us push that better.
And I think that it's important, like you mentioned, when you're dealing with illegal lotteries, like the connection, there's so many connections to all kinds of crimes, illegal crimes, like you mentioned, money laundering and different types of things. And people might not really know that when they're playing the game and, it's fun and it's there, and not know, first of all, that it is illegal, but then secondly, even if they do, that they're actually contributing to something illegal and nefarious, whereas when you stay legal, you stay along the legal lines where it benefits our Virgin Islands with respect to that. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, ma'am.
Doing your part in keeping the VI lottery legal. Right?
Yes.
Okay. And thank you for joining us on this episode of Justice Matters.